We continue now at the top of Daf Nunches Amud Aleph in Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 58a. And the previous Amud the Gemara was dealing with the line in the Mishnah which said that if an animal falls into a gina, falls into a garden, and causes damage, in that case it's considered to be an accident. There's nothing the owner of the animal could have done, and so therefore the owner does not have to pay damages. He just pays masha nenis. He just pays the benefit that was derived to the animal. And the Gemara is now revising what Rav said on the Mishnah as follows. Rav was actually saying a lomi boy kamma. Rav was saying a lomi boy, meaning what he was saying was, not only in this situation do you pay masha nenis, but also in the following situation, you pay masha nenis, and the Gemara explains it as follows. Lomi boy achla. We don't even need to say in a situation where the animal falls into the garden and eats from the garden, the mishalemes masha nenis. Certainly over there, the owner of the animal is going to pay for whatever benefit the animal derived. You're not going to pay again for damages, but you'll pay for the hana. Avol nechvata, but let's say it's a situation where the produce softened the impact and saved the animal, so there was also a benefit in that case. But I might say mavriach ari minichse chaverahu. That's the same thing as having a lion, chasing a lion away from the property of his friend. In that situation, it's considered to be that the person is essentially doing a mitzvah. And maybe in that case, you don't have to pay masha nenis because the person is doing the right thing. He's saving the animal using his produce, so to speak, similar to making a lion run away from the property of your friend. Masha nenis nami lo mashali. Maybe the owner of the animal doesn't even have to pay for the hana, doesn't even have to pay for the benefit. Kamash malon. So that's what Rav is teaching us, so that's what the Mishnah is teaching us, that he has to pay masha nenis even in that situation. And Rashi explains, Lomi boy achla de meshalemes mia masha nenis. We don't even need to say in a situation where it actually ate the produce, they have to pay for the hana, afagav de lo pasha b'shmirasa, even though there was no negligence in watching over the animal, the hanenis, but there was hana, and therefore you pay for it. Avol nechveta, but when it comes to a situation where it softens the impact, there, even in that exact damage, it was an onus. The whole thing was an accident. Maybe we would say in that situation, the owner of the field is chasing a lion away from the property of his friend. He's essentially saving the animal of his friend, that the animal wouldn't be injured by the impact of the ground. And the owner of the field is really just doing a mitzvah. Umidi lo lishkol, and you shouldn't be collecting any money. Kamash malon. So that's what it's teaching us, that again you do pay for the hana in that situation. And the Gemara continues, Ve'im hachinami, but why don't we say indeed that is the case? Meaning to say, we should say it is mavriach ari, and the person should not have to pay for the benefit that was derived to the animal. And the Gemara says, Mavriach ari minichse chaveiro midaitu. When it comes to the classic case of mavriach ari from the property of his friend, that's something that's done by his knowledge. He knows that he's chasing the lion away, he knows exactly what's happening, and therefore he's doing a mitzvah, and he doesn't take any money for it. But hai lav midaitu, but over here it's not with the person's knowledge, the animal is just falling into his garden, the produce happens to be softening the blow, but that's not a reason why the person, the owner of the animal, should not have to pay. Inami, or you could say mavriach ari minichse chaveiro les leipsei, that when it comes to chasing away a lion from the property of his friend, he's actually not losing any money in that case. But hayis leipsei, but here the person's actually losing money, the produce is damaged, and so therefore he should at least collect the benefit that was derived. And the Gemara continues, Hechi nafal. What exactly is the case in the Mishnah? How did the animal fall into this garden? Rav Kahana says, Shehuchlika b'meimei ragleh, that it slipped on its own urine. Rashi says, Shehuchlika b'meimei ragleha, me rishas haravim lagina, meaning it was in rishas haravim, it slipped on its urine, and it slipped into this garden. The onsa de lo salka daitu. The point is, this is a kind of accident that it would never occur to anyone that this would happen, and that's why the owner is not held liable to pay the damages. Rava says that the owner is walking with a few animals, and one animal pushed another animal, and meaning to say, another animal, it's chaver, the friend of this animal, so to speak, pushed it into the garden, and so therefore, again, that's something that should not necessarily have occurred to the person. It's considered to be an accident. And the Gemara says, Mando amar shadach v'sa chaver, the one that says that the other animal pushed it. So kol shekein shehuchlika b'meimei raglah. Certainly, if it slips on urine, if it slips on its own urine, that's something that would never have occurred. That's considered an onus. But the one who says that the accident was that it slipped on its urine, but if its friend pushed it, so that in that situation, there it actually might be considered negligence on the part of the owner, and he has to pay for the damages. Because the owner of the field can say to the owner of the animals, you should have had them walk in a single file line. The way that you were having them walk, it essentially set up a situation for this damage. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Kahana says, Lo shanu ela ba'osa aruga. This halach in the Mishnah is only true if the damage happens in that particular patch of the garden where the animal fell. Avol me aruga la aruga, but let's say the animal then gets up and moves from one patch of the garden to another one and causes more damage in that other aruga, so that's already considered to be a damage that the owner should have prevented. Mishalemes mashezika, so then the payment has to be that which was the amount of the damage. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, afilu me aruga la aruga, even if it goes from one patch of the garden to another patch of the garden, still we say he doesn't have to pay for the damages, you only have to pay for the benefit. Ve'afilu kol hayom kulo, and even if this happens for the entire day, ad sheteitze v'tachzor ladas, until it actually leaves the garden and returns ladas, it returns with the knowledge of the owner. And Rashi explains, Lo shanu demashenenis hu demeshalemes v'lo mashezika. We don't say that it pays only for the hana and not for the damages. Ela she'achla miyad ba'osa aruga shenafla sham. It's only when it eats immediately that patch of the garden where it fell. Tekevan da anusahi benefila anusahi nami bachilasa. Since it's considered an onus, an accident when it comes to falling into the garden, it's also considered an accident when it comes to eating the produce. Tekevan da chazi letzvu tusa lo mukman afshe. Since it sees the produce right underneath it, there's no way that it would hold back. Aval holcha me aruga la aruga v'achla. But if it actually walks to another patch and it eats, so then you have to pay for the damages. And again, we had Rabbi Yochanan's opinion says, no, even from aruga to aruga, still you don't have to pay for the damages unless it actually leaves and then returns with the knowledge of the owner. And the Gemara continues, Amar Papa says, Lo tema acheteitze ladas v'tachzor ladas. Now don't say in terms of what Rabbi Yochanan said, that the owner becomes responsible if it leaves and if it enters with the knowledge of the owner. Don't say that means that it leaves with the knowledge of the owner and it returns into the garden with the knowledge of the owner. Elakevan sheyotz ladas, but rather, once it leaves the garden with the knowledge of the owner, even if it returns without the owner's knowledge, still we're going to say the owner is responsible. My time, what's the reason? The Amar Le, because the owner of the land can say to the owner of the animal, Kavan de Yalfa, Kol Amos, the Mishtam de Lahasam Rata, since already it has now learned about this garden, so anytime it's going to escape, this is where it's going to go. You have to be extra careful in this situation. And Rashi explains, Lo teimach teitze ladas sheyodu habaylam sheyotzes v'tachzor ladas. Don't say that it has to leave with the owner's knowledge and return with the owner's knowledge, meaning shelo noal b'fanei karoi, that he didn't lock the gate properly in front of it. Ela kevan sheyotze ladas sheyodu b'tziasa. Once we know that it left, afal gav shechaz v'shelo ladas, even if it returned without the knowledge of the owner, meaning tahashta lo sagi lo b'shmira pechusa. Rashi explains the point is a shmira pechusa is no longer going to be effective for this animal. Normally, a shmira pechusa, an inferior kind of watching, is sufficient, but that is not the case in this situation. Because in this case already we know the animal has learned about going into this other garden, and you have to take an even higher level of protection. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Yorda kedarka v'izika, if the animal goes down in the normal fashion and causes damage, mishalemes mashezika. So then the owner has to pay what the damages are. And the Gemara says, Boy Rabbi Yirmi asks the following question. Yarda kedarka, let's say the animal went down in a normal fashion. We're talking about a pregnant animal. V'hizika b'mei leida, and then it causes damage with the amniotic fluid. So mahu, what would be the halacha in that situation? And the Gemara explains the question. According to the one who says that if at the outset there was negligence, but at the end some kind of onus accident happens, you're chayiv, so lo tiboilach. So then it's not a question at all. This is a case of tchilaso b'pshia. V'sofa b'onus, what happened initially was negligence on the part of the owner, but at the end it was an onus, and there's a mandamer that says tchilaso b'pshia v'sofa b'onus is chayiv. Ki tiboilach aliv the mandamer tchilaso b'pshia v'sofa b'onus potter. The question is according to the one who says that tchilaso b'pshia v'sofa b'onus is potter. So what would be the halacha in this case? Mi amrinan, do we say kevan the tchilaso b'pshia v'sofa b'onus potter? Since this was a case of tchilaso b'pshia v'sofa b'onus, that would be a situation where the owner is potter, as Rashi says, tchilaso b'pshia b'lav leida hayelo l'shomer. Forgetting about the birth, you have to watch the animal. Shaloti kanes v'tocha, that it shouldn't enter into this other field and eat the produce. But v'sofa b'onus, but at the end it was an onus. Lo haya yodeya shetayla, the owner didn't know that it was going to give birth. So on the one hand, we could say tchilaso b'pshia v'sofa b'onus is potter in this case. Odilmer, maybe hacha kula b'pshihu. Maybe this really is considered entirely negligence. The kavan the kachazi the krevelo lemelad, because since the owner sees that it's close to giving birth, iboy leilentur, so he has to watch over it. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Ches Amud Beis.